If you've ever watched any of my old, terrible Roblox videos back during lockdown, you've probably noticed that when it came to Halloween, my upload schedule went wild. Like I was obsessed with the holiday. Weirdly, hardly ever made any Christmas-themed videos, but that's mostly because Halloween events in games were just kind of better. I don't actually care that much about Halloween. Sure, I'll carve pumpkins. And last year I dressed up as Tomie by Junji Ito. I kind of dislike the holiday, to an extent. Mostly because I connect the holiday with those horrible, overstimulating Halloween parties. Ugh. My ideal Halloween is having a little get-together with friends or family, find a fun, terrible Halloween film. Armageddon has become a bit of a tradition for a few years now. For this video, I want to go through some perfectly spooky films to watch this Halloween. Let's start with some surreal and psychological horror. It's possibly my favourite horror film ever. I want to talk about two I've watched for the first time this month, Picnic and Battle Royale. Now Picnic has some of the most brave and bold depictions of trauma visually in media. It's just so incredibly out there. It's very weird and a very strange film. It's not strictly a horror, but it's very strong horror elements, creating a very surreal and quite traumatizing watch. Battle Royale is somehow easier to watch, even though it's about teenagers killing each other. It's shot wonderfully, it's chillingly effective of the message of this film is trying to convey. Watching this when it came out with a political context must have been horrifying, but it holds up incredibly. I think it's well shot, the acting is immaculate. It's such a bit of a shame that it inspired Fortnite. So a perfect horror film to me, is Perfect Blue. This film is so beautifully amazing. It's like all my deepest fears and anxieties put into one immaculate piece of animation. Some parts feel like a gut punch, others feel a bit comforting, just seeing my fears and anxieties portrayed so well on the big screen. This film is not at all an easy watch, although it did take me a few rewatches to truly get my own interpretation of a film. That's another thing I love about this film. It's written so well, everyone comes up with their own personal connection. The way Mima spirals is horrific to watch. Her apartment is claustrophobic, but it's her own safe space. It's heartbreaking to see her safe place get torn apart once her paparazzi find it. The shot angles used the claustrophobia of her apartment, and some really effective visual effects, like how they showed Mima's anxiety visually through lighting techniques and cramped spaces, like the bathtub scene. I just sure hope nobody by the name of Darren Aronofsky. I sure hope no one of that name doesn't steal any aspects of this beautiful film. Masterpiece 5 Blue Hearts. I luckily got tickets for a 4K screening of this recently, and I'm so happy I did. This film gave me so much shivers at the cinema. Maybe my favourite final fight in any horror film. So iconic and horrifically stunning. Yeah, for sure, this film is set during spring, but weirdly, a film completely set outside, it doesn't feel very seasonal. So, it's again a perfect film to watch in October or Halloween. The Wicker Man is a psychological cult film. Without it, cinema and horror as a genre wouldn't be the same. I feel like everybody knows the influence of this film without knowing the film. We wouldn't have films such as Midsommar, The Menu, even probably Don't Hug Me I'm Scared or Hot Fuzz. I want everyone who even has the slightest interest in horror to watch this film, even if for the first time it's a low quality upload on YouTube, like I did. I finally got around to watching the final cut Blu-ray recently. I love the nicely remastered old footage that was originally cut from the theatrical release. I think it's directed and edited a lot nicer than I remember from the theatrical. I want to get to watching the extended cut sometime soon. Speaking of editing, this film is full of quite unusual editing choices that stop this film from being completely perfect. There's some weird editing in the last half hour or so that feels weirdly chilling. It's hard to describe. I wish there was more editing like that throughout the film. The shot choices are sometimes questionable, but it adds a lot of weirdness and surrealism to the film. This film has one of my favourite stabbing shots in all of cinema. The costume design is immaculate, the cult outfits are amazingly eerie. I love the songs, the acting is hauntingly believable, all made with a budget of about 2 buttons. This film is breathtaking, the definition of a cult film. It's a film with incredibly weird aspects, and it's not super popular, and I feel like the fans absolutely love it like I do. Next film I'll be talking about is La Casa Lobo, the definition of surreal horror. Holy shit, this is an incredibly tough watch, with or without historical background context on how World War II is relevant to this film. It's heartbreaking, but if you want to go in completely blind, without researching the meaning, I don't blame you. The stop motion is immaculate, and you can easily go in blind to be spooked and really appreciate the animation, which gives the illusion that it's just one take. Now, any David Lynch film can be talked about here. He's the defining point of surrealism in cinema. But a lot of his stuff isn't strictly horror. There's Rabbits, which is a spooky short film. There's Twin Peaks, which is just a perfect autumn watch, but the television show. But I think my favourite of his work, which is horror, is Mulholland Drive. I love this film. I would also love to understand this one day. I don't feel like watching a realistic portrayal of statistics torture, but I suppose it's my fault for going into Michael Haneke's funny games completely blind. This film was horrible to watch. I absolutely hated it. This film felt like it reached down inside my stomach, deformed my organs, and then for the cherry on top, it hit my core with a golf club. As much as I hated this film, I wish it didn't exist. This film is incredibly well made. I think the camera angles show how pathetically dominant Paul feels throughout the film is done quite well, along with the fourth wall breaks, and the glares he shows at the screen. It's just so chilling, and the whole film works incredibly well. That's a very effective psychological horror film. The cinematography, especially the second half of the film, reminds me a lot of Alfred Hitchcock's Rope, with its long take. Although Rope is blatantly fiction enough to enjoy, to be filled by the drama and tension, Funny Game is like the evil twin of that. You're kind of rooting for the main two villains in Rope because they're so cartoonishly evil. I wish horrible things upon the two main villains in Funny Games. They terrify me. The overall setting of isolated holiday homes, the lake, and how it's all set in daytime for the most part, and how the only music in this film is diegetic sound. Or you never see these tropes in typical horror films, adding this really weird tension and gut-wrenching, uncomfortable feel to this very effective outsider horror film. Now let's cheer ourselves up with a little more spooky horror, like the definitive meaning of horror, which is a little more light-hearted in certain ways. But before we discuss some campy, fun horror, let's talk about more horror that feels a bit more easy to consume than psychological, without the psychological aspects. I think the scariest film I've ever watched in terms of jump scares and heebie-jeebiness is The Descent. I love this film. It's about these cave divers who encounter these spooky bat critters inside of a cave. They are cave diving in. Ridley Scott's Alien from 1979 is also up there with being some of the best horror out there. It's absolutely iconic. I watched Romulus for the first time a month ago, and I think it's a very faithful sequel, or prequel, or whatever. If you think I'm not talking about enough about each film, you should follow me on Letterboxd at GoodTasteISwear. You can see all my full reviews of every film I adore and every film I don't love as much. A very recent horror film that I fell in love with recently, well, not recent, is The Substance, a body horror film about a substance that makes you molt into a younger, more ideal depiction of yourself, and it terrifies me. I hate body horror, but that's why I love it so much. I adore Junji Ito. I adore horror that really sticks with me. Another film that the Americans tried to take credit for is Ringu, a very iconic horror film that had an awful American remake, which actually brought a lot of attention to the original, which is nice. This film is incredible, and I absolutely love it. This isn't the first film on this list who got an awful American remake, and it sadly isn't the last. The Shining and The Evil Dead 2 are also very ideal for this time of year, although I don't have much to add that's not already been said about these two films. These films are great and very important to cinema, and you don't need to watch the original Evil Dead to enjoy the sequel. It's practically a remake. Number 2, The Shining. A popular number 1 spot for very good reasons. It's a fucking Shining. For cinematography, this film's a masterpiece for that alone. This film is about Jack Torrance, a winter caretaker staying at a hotel while he attempts to write a book with creative block. He's staying here with his wife and child from the beginning. The film has like this eerie feeling. Not many people notice this on the first time, but the layout of the hotel makes absolutely no sense, adding to the surrealism of the film. The plot is relatively simple once the viewer is settled on each character. Freaky things start to happen, with immaculate filmmaking for each iconic spooky scene. The music is incredibly iconic, the main theme even being ripped off by the only good Friday the 13th film. The more I learn about this film, the more I rewatch it, the more I fall in love with this film. Even the small details about how the structure of a hotel, like mentioned earlier, doesn't make any sense, and the eerie glances. Jack Nicholson very subtly looks straight into the camera, breaking the fourth wall, adding like creepiness, so much creepiness to the film. He like does it for like a split second, more like a second, but it's sometimes very noticeable. And it's so creepy. Sadly, the last film on this list isn't part of this series, but look how cute the Stanley Kubrick tubs are. But horror wouldn't be the same without its origins. It's kind of hard to pinpoint the very beginning, but very, very early examples of horror can be traced back to Nosferatu with Sympathy of Horror from 1922, and The Lost World from 1925, influencing Universal Studios to make these high-budget, iconic monster films, usually based on European books. Throughout the 30s, and all the way into the 50s, the first with Drácula, a competition against the silent film Nosferatu, then the famous Frankenstein, which is fantastic, the Mummy, which isn't so fantastic, the Invisible Man, which is great, and the Wolfman, which is an absolute banger. Lastly, the only film that isn't based on a book is The Creature from the Black Lagoon, which kind of absolutely killed off. Luckily, it was the same year as Godzilla came out, but more about it. I have a very soft spot for all of these films. I love seeing how horror evolved over time. It's the genre's history that interests me the most. Among these years, there are many spin-offs and sequels and crossovers between these monsters, most famously The Bride of Frankenstein. These films were like the first ever crossover films, making these films very important to horror history, and cinema history as a whole. King Kong from 1933 completely changed the game for monster films altogether. Although I'm not a big fan of this film, the stop motion is timeless and very well done though. It had many sequels and spin-offs following Universal's path of capitalism, which notably inspired my favourite anti-war film of all time, Godzilla from 1954. The film addresses the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It features a monster created by resurrecting dinosaur DNA, resulted in burnt scaly monster. The creation inspired by I want to go here though. I don't know if I want to continue this sentence actually. What was on my mind? You can skip to 10 seconds on if you don't want to hear this gross fact, but the skin of Godzilla was inspired by the skin of the victims, which is haunting. But I've already made a whole video about Godzilla, so go check it out. The US, of course, released its American remake using multiple adding American segments, influenced by World War II, which are two real hits at the time. This film was meant to be realistic, but nearly as usual. It renamed the film from Godzilla to Godzilla, monster, that's where Godzilla picked up from. Basically, Godzilla had to kind of capitalize. And they were putting out sequels purely for money. The original creator hatred towards sequels to bring back Godzilla, creating sequels for fun and not just money or passion for the characters. This is about Godzilla series really changed for better in my opinion, alongside Godzilla Studios released many of the monster films, notably Royale, a 1954 thriller, Mothra, a 1961 political monster film. But yeah, nowadays, the Americans have all the rights to Godzilla and are just putting out this CGI dependent stuff, which don't really have the same messaging as the good Godzilla films. But yeah, like I said, I've already made a whole video on Godzilla, and I like it, so you check it out. I've never been big on Psycho. The film pioneered films purely about murder killing, which I believe this genre was not the same route. 1974 classic, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I've never been really that big of a fan of Psycho. The film pioneered films really purely about murder killing, which I believe the genre would not be the same route. Also helped to both 1974 films, Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Black Christmas, which are two films I mentioned at the start of the video. Coincidentally, both cannot be part of this list properly because they are both summer and Christmas films. The next important turning point in horror, in my opinion, was the writer and director Wes Craven, the creator of A Nightmare on Elm Street. Once he sold the rights off to other people, and they made quite terrible sequels. Rewatching A Nightmare on Elm Street made me really wish I was there for release back in 1984. I love old horror films, and I must say this was one of the most effective of the 60s, 70s and 80s, and even the 90s period. This is one of my favourite horror films. It's just so iconic. A lot of effects in this film are insanely well done, and I think hold up incredibly well today. Freddy is such an iconic, lovable lunatic. Even Chucky and Jason kill for a reason. Freddy's just a fucking cunt. And he even gets weird in the sequel. And although the bad reviews, I love it. I feel like it's very faithful. I think it's very faithful to the original. There's like 4 films you can ignore. Then Wes Craven, my beloved, he brought back the series with a very meta New Nightmare, and that influenced him to make Scream, which is also a very important horror film, which you can also watch this Halloween. But you cannot have Halloween without talking about the Halloween film, Halloween, from 1970 something, I don't know. I found this film pretty boring. I think the sequel is a bit more fun, which was never really meant to happen, by the way. Because Halloween was supposed to be a trilogy of 3 different stories, that's why Season of the Witch is so different. Who knows what the Halloween sequel was meant to be? I believe it was meant to be something like Halloween, Season of the Witch, I think that works as a sequel, as a trilogy, I mean. But Michael Myers was so successful that they just brought him back for capitalism. Yay! And the Halloween franchise just became so exhausting. It was. Next up, Coraline, one of my faves of all time. As a child, I must have watched this film at least once a month. Not even waiting for October. I practically know it off by heart. The animation is some of the best in cinema. This whole film is just immaculate. Then there's Cure. This film feels like everyone wants to watch it, but no one ever has, apparently. I love this film. It's perfectly tense and gloomy. It's 28 days later. Maybe, yeah, Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead might be the origin of zombies in media, but I think 28 days later did it the best, I think. The Silence of the Lambs, everyone's seen it. You don't really need an introduction. Amazing film. There's also Manhunter to check out if you too love this film. The House, a little stop-motion film that came out a few years ago during lockdown, which didn't really get many attention, which makes me really upset because everyone, I think, needs to go out and watch this beautiful anthology horror film. As a transition point between spooky horror and campy horror, I want to talk about The Happiness of the Katakuris, which is just I think it's just a perfect transition point in my opinion. My first impression of Takashi Miike, is that how you pronounce his name? Takashi Miike's stunning filmography was Audition. I guess fuck me for going in a film completely blind. I was not ready with whatever the hell was about to happen. The film starts off like an average coming of age slice of life film if you exclude the weird stop motion introduction scene that has little to nothing to do with the actual plot. As you see the film goes on, the Katakuri family just go more and more insane, and I absolutely love it. I'm all for it. Happiness and the Katakuris are about a struggling hotel run by a family, and the first guest in a while takes his own life in the room, and it becomes a running theme for every single guest dies in some way, so they just keep hiding the bodies. It's a visually insane and stunning film. It drags you through so many different styles and visual changes without waiting for viewers to prepare themselves. The stop motion is immaculate. The songs, because this film is of course a musical, all slap. I just love this film. One issue I have with it is that there's an awful lot of Japanese pop culture references, but it's hard to understand to a worldwide audience. If I did, I think this film would just be even better. Now there's camp horror, and then there's campy horror. The Rocky Horror Picture Show is a bit of both. This horror musical is so much fun. I would recommend it to anyone who's into horror or, well, music, because the soundtrack is just incredible all the way through. It's so much fun to see like the showing of this film and just dress up and be as weird and campy as you want. Well, that's not the only time Tim Curry has starred in a very important film for horror history. It, 1990, was the first adaptation of the Stephen King novel. Tim Curry is just amazing as Pennywise. I can't think of many people who would master that feel of the role so well. This is a very mini series, only having 2 episodes, so not really a film, but 2 1.5-hour episodes, making it 3 hours long altogether. 3-hour long retelling of Stephen King's It is a tiny bit hard to sit through at times. Thankfully, I was in a long car journey last time I watched this, so it went by so well. But this mini series does have a bit of a problem with pacing. I can't imagine watching this at home without any breaks. I understand it's a very long book, and this is a very mini series, but it feels so long, but yet doesn't cover an awful lot of the book, which, you know, sometimes can be a good thing, but it is kind of sad that the giant space turtle has not been adapted to screen yet. I wasn't expecting to like this as much as the 2017-19 adaptation, because the last time I watched this mini series I was about 12 or so, and I didn't have very strong feelings towards it. I don't think this is much better than the 2017-19 version, but I think I like this a lot more, and I had a lot more fun with it. Obviously, Tim Curry as Pennywise is just a perfect casting choice. The cinematography is great. It's shot absolutely wonderfully. So when I'm bored of not enough Tim Curry on the screen, I can always distract myself with how well everything is being shot. The 2017-19 version had a very large budget. This did not. Certain scenes feel very cheap, but it leaves the crew to experiment and to be more imaginative with the wonderful practical effects, which I appreciate a lot. This is a very underrated adaptation of it, and Stephen King in general. I talk about how Child's Play was a bit of a bloodline because it doesn't feel very old to me, but that doesn't cancel all films out. I don't really want to put sequels in this list. I want every film on this list to be watchable without needing prior films. Bride of Chucky is the exception of this video, because sadly you cannot just watch it on its own. But how you're able to go through Halloween without watching Bride of Chucky, I think it's such a fun, campy film. But yeah, sadly, it's the fourth film, so you kind of just, but you do kind of just need to watch the original, some backstory information. This film is so iconic. Oh, I dropped my mic. So iconic, and just a must watch for Halloween. Finally, to end this video, I want to talk about Friday the 13th Part 3, which has a few names, like Friday the 13th 3D, or Friday the 13th Part 3, or Friday the 13th Part 3 3D. It's most commonly just called Part 3 now, and despite the name, this is kind of the start of Friday the 13th. It's when it found its own original identity. It's weird to think that it took 2 films for Jason to get his iconic hockey mask. This film is bad. But if you're expecting any quality, if you're expecting a Friday the 13th film to be well made in any way, and made with the same love and care like Chad's playing for Nightmare on Elm Street, you really need to lower your standards. Friday the 13th is just an even duller rip-off, emulating off the success of John Carpenter's Halloween. I didn't really care for the final chapter all that much. Part 3 is just everything I wanted out of this film series. Friday the 13th Part 3 is so fun. It's a really dumb and silly film with crappy acting and horrible 3D effects, which were even outdated even for its time, but it's Friday the 13th, it's all outdated. Jason is just a Scooby-Doo villain in this film. His outfit choice is its best here, with his obviously iconic hockey mask, cartoonishly green shirt, and cartoonishly blue jeans, which he randomly changes to grey and brown. Randomly in the next 2 films. It's a continuity error which just really seems to irritate me. The final chapter was a bit underwhelming compared to this film's unironically great finale. The final chapter was a bit underwhelming compared to this film's unironically great finale, with great camera work and great camera work and choreography. Jason Lives manages to be a satisfying follow-up, which seems to be the only film with a friendly production environment, and it must be somewhat good if it inspired the incredible Wes Craven. Season.